Awesome. So this is going to be, if you've ever been on a website where there's some drawings, this is a bit old school of doing it, but you can update it to work with JavaScript as well. But you could see here that we can use JavaScript to actually build out things. Okay. So you can see here, let me mute this guy. I'm actually going to go ahead and just grab some of this code over here. Let's copy it. And I don't think it gives me the code for the rectangle examples just yet. But what I'll do is I'm just going to paste in the code that I have over here into my item here. So let me paste this in. See this guy. Cool. And you'll notice that this is a bit older because sometimes we get the message that the browser doesn't support it. But we'll see here that I'm actually going to be able to get a canvas element, pretty similar to what we've had before, that is drawn onto my screen. Nice. Now you'll notice here that we've seen this piece of code before, this onload of rectangle examples, and what that does essentially is load up examples of JavaScript that we can use. And right now our code isn't really doing anything, but what we can do here is try to create an example of how to make this guy work. So why don't we go into our script of this file here, and I'll actually toss the starting file into our Zoom chat there. And cool, when I first start up my script, what I'm going to do is I'll make a variable called canvas, and I'm going to get the element of get element by ID, and the ID I'm going to use is this canvas element that's down there already. We'll see here that I have canvas ID is equal to canvas. That's kind of where I'm getting it from. Oops. See here. And let me pull back up my example file. And after I go ahead and grab that canvas there, we could try to use either 2D or 3D dimensional drawings. So the way that we can determine, hey Selvin, welcome. The way that we can determine if it's going to be 2D or 3D is by this get context function. So again, a lot of this is kind of pre-built for us. And sometimes it could be a bit convoluted if we're seeing it all at once. But we'll see here that I can get my context, and I can use an identifier such as 2D to identify how I'm going to draw something out. Okay. So again, all I'm doing right here is I have this canvas with an ID. I have a specific height and width, which is similar to like a margin page. And you'll know what? I'm going to get rid of that kind of middle part here. And not too much new code right here, but we already see, if I refresh this and let me inspect my element, we'll see that I actually have this canvas with an ID of canvas in my page here. So I have HTML, body, and then canvas. Nice. So now that we have this kind of canvas set up, let me add this new one in here. What we could try to do here is actually try to draw some things. So now that I have syntax for this guy, I could attempt to fill in my canvas with certain things. So I can use context. And again, I call this variable CTX for context based off the book as well. You can call it, if you prefer context like this one, you can call it that way. JavaScript doesn't really care. I will say, though, when Felipe and I encountered this yesterday, if you're ever working with functions, and JavaScript is a bit annoying with this, let's just say that I have a function called context. Oops. Like so. And then somewhere in my code, I do something like context is equal to 5. This is just a random example. What will happen is that JavaScript isn't smart enough to differentiate between this being a variable and this being a function. Languages like Swift that Apple uses are. They're able to tell if it's a function or a variable. And essentially what we could do here, or the purpose of me bringing this up is that what will happen is if you're calling this context as a function in your code down here, you'll start getting errors because it's technically a number. So in general, try to keep your names different. If you want to use the same word, maybe you could call it context F for function. For our purpose here, we won't really get an issue because this is called get context. so that's not an issue. What I could say now is context.fill_style, and this is going to go ahead, let's call it green or something. The context fill style is going to determine what to fill it in as. And this fill rec, essentially, we'll see up here, I have a canvas rectangle dot fill rect X number, Y number, W number, and H number. So I can provide the width, or the X, the Y, the width, and the height. Let's just go ahead and try to play around with these numbers really quick. Okay. Let me pull up. And we'll see up here. Oops, look at this guy. We'll see up here that we have these types of colors that go in. So I might need to go ahead and load in this function. So what I'll do here is on my onload of rectangle examples, my script is kind of running right away. What I'm going to try to do is create a function called rectangle examples. And let me actually put all these guys inside of it here. Cool. And we'll notice now that when I added in this rectangle example, I got this item drawn for me. So this is just, again, kind of the basis of Canvas. You'll see that my canvas has a width and a height of 80 and 250. But we can go ahead and get different context with this guy as well. Let's see if I can do a second fill rec. Let me do like 60, 70. And let's draw him at... okay. So you see here what happens now is that it adds it on top of it. And we could probably change the fill style of it as well. Something like red. Okay. And now we can see here that I'm drawing these graphics onto my screen. So this function is essentially running, and I can fill into my screen whatever I'd like it to fill in. But for our purposes here, we're using this rectangle to do this. Okay. Now, there's a few more stylistic decisions, and again, similar to CSS, you'll find more of these as we're going on. I'll add one here for us. This can help us fill in a border, like so. And we'll see here I can do something like context. Let's see here. Oops, let me put in the rest of it. I can determine the line width of my context. Let me do it as 5. Unfortunately, my VS Code doesn't really auto-populate these guys. Let me make this style black. And let me go ahead and put this guy at the same values as the previous one. Let me make this one 20. And let's see here. Let me put this guy out. And essentially these properties here should go ahead and apply a type of, oops, this should be line width is equal to 20. Sorry about that. Instead of the function calls. There we go. So now we'll see up here that what I'm getting with this line width and stroke style. So I was putting them as functions instead of setting it equal. So I can put my context as line width, which is again this context of a rectangle that I'm using, to a certain value. That will change how much output I have here. And then I could change the stroke style of it as well. Okay. So again, you can kind of manually do this so that it's setting it onto the borders of your, the borders of your rectangles here. So we can see this is at 20. If I put this guy to 80, we'll see that now I've surrounded this guy as a border. Nothing too major, but again, in your chapter 12, you use Canvas to kind of draw these angles. And again, you're drawing these angles with JavaScript code. Okay. Cool. So you can also go ahead and just kind of put these filled rectangles with borders on them as well. And we'll see here that we can get pretty creative. If I'm going to grab up, let me go ahead and get this code from down here. And again, this file will be shared with you so you can reference it later. But if I use this guy, oops, let me see here. They might be on the same plane here. Let me change this guy to context. I believe there's a way I can select all of them. It's fine. There's usually a shortcut where you can like auto replace all of them, but cool. Now we'll see how I get this kind of different border styles based on this line width and stroke style, and then all these guys here. Okay, so that's kind of your basis of drawing with the excuse me, with this context. We can also go ahead and with this context create. Let's go ahead and see if we can get a bit more experimental. So we'll see up here that I have in my document a canvas with the # canvas. That's its ID. What I can do down here is create a second canvas. Its ID could be something like, let's say, canvas 2. Let's keep it the same width, but let's make it a bit higher so we can keep it at 480. The height of this guy could be about 300. Nothing major. Cool. And we'll see now that I have a secondary canvas that I can work with. And the entire purpose of this drawing in items here is I can say CTX, second context. You can say context 2 if you want. Is equal to document.getElementById. The ID that I referenced was canvas 2 because that's what was down there. And now I can go ahead and try to create some of these fill text here. So I could say context.fill text. And I'm going to go ahead and type in the manual type of text that I want. So I'll type in hello world like usual. And we'll see here that if I'm only typing in the text of it, nothing really pops up for me, which is unfortunate. What we'll need to add in is also some elements of the width, and the height there. So I can go 5 and 30. Okay. And we'll see, very briefly, I got hello world written up here. Now what's happening is that I'm typing it on context 2, so it's not working. But now we could see if I don't set my context 2 to have a certain style or stroke style, it's not going to work for me. So let me go ahead and say context 2 dot stroke style is equal to, let's do green again. Okay. Not only does the stroke style need to be changed, let me try to fill in. Oops. Let me try to change the fill style. Okay. And it looks like, is this guy not working for me? Stroke correct. Is it line width maybe? Sometimes you might need to add a bit more in. Oh, that's probably why. I forgot to get my variable created here. So with that. So what I could say is after I go ahead, get my canvas here, I could try to get, let me do it this way. So I'm going to need to say canvas2 is equal to document.getElementId, and then I'll say put the context to on this canvas. So context essentially tells me which canvas to draw on. Similar to this one up here. And essentially what this line of code does at line 37 is say, go ahead and create a context 2. And what we're going to be drawing is we're going to be drawing on canvas 2 with 2-dimensional items there. So that's what that one's doing. Okay. This one should be working for me now. Let me go ahead and grab some of these guys. There we go. Cool. So now we'll see after I get my fill style set to green. I have my hello world written over here. And I also have this big object written as well. Okay. And I can change up the width of this guy too. Can push them in from there. And then mess around with the parameters of it as well. Okay. Cool. So again, this is just kind of playing around with canvases and drawing text. You know, you can mess around with them. It's more It's more up to you on how you'd like to do it. These examples use lots of different contexts for it, but the main idea I want everyone to know is that the way that you can draw items onto your HTML, usually images and stuff works out too, but you can create a canvas, and the canvas is essentially this object, and then the object is going to be able to be written on. So we can write like code, images, rectangles, or text onto it, and then that will be fine for this purpose. Okay. Cool. There's a few different types of text that we can draw as well. I just want to make sure that we see see here. Nice. So the line segment and arcs are things that we might see in chapter 12. So again, what we could do here, see here, is try to draw a bit more on our context. So if I do context move to, and what this will do is it will move me to a specific path. So maybe something like, let's just try to copy this one, 50 and 100. I could then try to do align to 50 and 100. Okay. Let me actually get rid of this fill rec one. We'll see that nothing happens on my screen. I'm just writing out hello world. But if I go ahead and I try to add in this context2.stroke, we'll see now I get an actual neat line that's drawn across there. Okay. And I can bump up my context there to move it where it's going to go, maybe down to 500. You'll notice that I'm actually passing out the 300 height that I used here, which isn't really that good. So make sure that you kind of stay in the bounds of what your context is. But you'll see it won't really go past it. If I make this guy, let's make him 1000, you'll see that I'm not able to actually get out of the bounds of my canvas. We can't really draw past the canvas that we're given. Okay. That's a line segment. For a simpler one like arcs and everything too, we can kind of mimic the code that's given up here. We create stroke styles, fill styles, and line widths. Let me go ahead and add in the context of these guys here. Okay. You'll notice when I do it this way, we get a style of dark violet, and I'm able to draw an arc and fill it in. And you can see here that my stroke style is darker than my, sure. You know where's the stroke style and the fill style are a bit different. So that kind of gives the illusion of like them being surrounded by it. Okay. So that's kind of how you could go ahead and create these different types of guys. You can make some interesting art, and the idea here is that your chapter 12 uses these canvases to draw backwards on these items, and that's what you'll be focusing on in that chapter. We could draw paths and everything as well, and different styles. I would say if you're confused about drawing these guys, you can look at the examples in the PowerPoint for it. And a cool thing as well is that we can use these types of animations. Okay. So animations can also be used with intervals, but the idea here is that we're going to reference some type of code that creates intermittent animations for us. Okay. So let's see if we can actually create this together here. So on my initialized document, after I go ahead and I create all these guys, I could do something where I say context. Let's see here. Oops. Let me see if we can look at the draw heading functions. Let me go ahead and say something like context.setTransform. This is going to go ahead and make this type of dimensional transform. I'm just going to use with the, you're most likely going to be provided this with chapter 9. But what we could try to do here is something like context.fill style. Put a blue. Let's do it this way. Context.fill text equal to, oops. Hello. Let me kind of copy what it's saying here too. Center X. Title baseline. And let me pull this guy up here. Okay. And now I can go ahead. Do I put in these guys? Let's try to see if we can get, let's see here, draw face. I'm going to go ahead and add in stop begin path. Okay, so begin path is going to go ahead and start up this drawing for us. And what you can do now after you begin this path is something like an arc. Let's do it this way. Center Y. Now, this is all provided for you, and again, the mathematical functions won't change on these scenarios, but you won't need to remember them for the quiz or for the assignment. You can usually just reference them like this one here. Oops, let me do context.fill. Okay. And then context.stroke. Okay. And essentially what we could do here is begin drawing all these guys together. Let me actually go ahead and see if I can mimic this guy a bit more. Put this one in here. Oops. Might need to get the remainder of the code there. Let's try 1 sec, everyone. It's a lot of like heavy coding together, so usually you can just reference a previous example. But in general, what will happen here, let's take a look at this guy too, is that all these canvas items will be drawn incrementally using JavaScript. Okay. So again, you can kind of use these intervals that are a part of it as well, such as set interval, which will pretty much delay how your drawing will work. Let me go ahead and show us a few canvas animations. Do W tree. Cool. So as another small example, we could see over here. Let me go ahead and try it yourself. We'll see that we have basic divs and everything, but in this animation down here, you'll see that we have this clear interval ID. My ID is set to set interval with this frame of 10. And then I have this function called frame, where it goes ahead and it checks their positions, and then it increments the position. So if I go ahead and I click on the click me button, it's going to run this my move button down here. And you'll see that when you click it, it's actually just going to manually change where it's working there, okay? So it's going to keep moving its position until it gets to the top and the left. And based on the HTML that's part of it, let's go ahead and look at our console as well. Okay. We'll see that we're pretty much changing our HTML as we're going through it, and this guy is being incremented. So let's take a look at this guy real quick. We'll see that his position, element style, top and left, it starts at element.style, has no difference there, but when I click me, we'll see that his top and left are actually moving towards the right there. And the reason that's happening is this piece of code right here, where we're manually changing the style of that guy. And thus he's getting the illusion of him. Well, not the illusion, but he's actually moving across the screen. Okay, so that's in general this animation concept. I would say that you can copy down the FaceWeb page code as well just to see an animation of that. But again, the position-related commands such as stroke rec and line 2, which we've seen before, use an X and Y coordinate system. So you have your X coordinate, which is horizontal. You have your Y coordinate, which is up and down. And always it's going to be set at the top left of your canvas. So essentially up here is where your canvas is going to be looking. And the translation command is going to move the origin and the coordinate system X pixels to the right and Y pixels down. Okay. So that's kind of what happens when we use this translate command. I believe that we use function there, but translate's the same type of idea where you're manually shifting. You can see right here in the else, we're manually shifting the X and the Y. And that's what's moving our code there. Okay. There's this little function called clear, where no redrawing, if you don't want to redraw anything, the clear will work for us. what I'll go ahead and do here for us is let me kind of, so that we're not just looking at the online code, let me go ahead and just make one more snippet of code. I'm going to call this one Canvas Smile. It's going to be pretty similar to the one that we just made. And let me add all this into our script here. I don't need that source. Grab this guy. And let me grab this guy too. Cool. So let's go ahead and see. Oh, it kind of runs immediately. It's a bit weird looking, but you can see here that when I run my code here now, I go ahead and I draw out this kind of smiley face on my canvas. I fill in the styles, I fill in the arcs, but essentially it's stroking, it's using this translation to make it. Okay. So that'll be provided for you to reference. And you have a few states that you'll save and restore. But in general, what will happen is that you just want to reference all this canvas stuff for your, see here, AD110. Let's see here. Where is this guy? There we go. In our, oh, I already had him up. Oh, there he is. In our chapter 12, you have this type of solar shadow that's going on. So what will happen is that when you click on your code, again, this will all be written to you, but you'll already notice that you have a canvas in your code, canvas with a margin, border, and background. And essentially, we're going to be, with this JavaScript, changing the canvas around whenever we're running our code. So if you click a button, your canvas will be updated, your canvas will be shifted, and it will just kind of update it for us there, okay? So this one is most likely going to be a bit heavier with the canvas code. I'm not expecting everyone to kind of, it's a lot of code to understand with the cosines and the changing. So the code will definitely help you out when you're learning it there. But again, it's important to just know what's going on with canvas. You're drawing onto a canvas using context. And again, you can see here, we're using context and canvas, the same styles that we used before. And that's what's drawing. Oops, let me close this guy. That is what is drawing all of these shaders at the back there. Okay.